Our next speaker is Shereen Hughes. Shereen is the Virginia Coordinator for the Chesapeake Bay Landscape Professionals Program and Assistant Director for Wetlands Watch. She serves on the board of the Chesapeake Conservation Landscaping Council and numerous groups focused on the James River and Norfolk watersheds. Shereen is a longtime member of the Virginia Native Plant Marketing Partnership and co-developed 2 native plant guides, Native Plants for Southwest Virginia and Native Plants for Stormwater Best Management Practices. Shereen holds a BS in Geology from James Madison University and a Landscape Design Certificate from George Washington University. So, welcome, Shereen.
Thank you very much. Fun fact, my prior life I was a hydrogeologist, consulting hydrogeologist, and we actually did water quality sampling of wells and surface water features for Maryland Department of Transportation for road salt contamination. So it was really interesting to come back around to that. So I'm going to step back, and instead of talking about what's in the water, we're going to talk about what causes the contamination and what we're doing and how we've organized professionals and trained them to start thinking about what actions we're taking on the land, what the land use cover is, and what we can do in the landscape, in the natural landscape and along our shorelines and in the built environment to manage our stormwater runoff and manage the sources of contamination that are ending up in our waterways. So we're going to be talking about growing a network of certified professionals, and we are all partners for clean and healthy watersheds. Just a little background on the development if you've never heard about it and who's running it. Wetlands Watch is based in Norfolk. We're a Virginia-wide organization, and we work where land, water, and communities meet to conserve nature in a changing climate. And we promote the use of natural and nature-based practices that are stormwater practices, flood mitigation practices, habitat restoration practices, because they not only protect wetlands, they protect water quality, they provide habitat, they provide flood mitigation, and these are all things we need to deal with in a changing climate. The Chesapeake Conservation Landscaping Council educates and supports professionals and citizens in promoting conservation landscaping and for the health of the Chesapeake Bay. And as 2 organizations, we manage, and the Chesapeake Conservation Landscaping Council, CCLC, is the administrating partner. But we also partnered to develop this program. We started in actually Hampton Roads. I did a study in Hampton Roads for the Hampton Roads Planning District Commission about how are we going to meet our water quality goals for the watershed implementation plan. And we were looking at how can we get more people on private property to adopt stormwater practices and conservation landscaping practices to help us meet our goals. And how can we support local government staff's efforts to meet their water quality goals? The Department of Wildlife Resources Habitat Partners was an early partner in this development and is part of the consortium, as is University of Maryland Sea Grant Extension, and recently Penn State Extension joined our group. We formed an organization, and Chesapeake Conservation Landscaping Council and Wetlands Watch were the organizing partners. We've managed it, and we have a steering committee. We had over 40 different organizations from local governments, state government organizations, nonprofits, citizens, private sector, landscape and stormwater professionals who joined us to help develop the program and continue to support us in this program. So when we designed this training program, it was really designed to address the challenges for local governments and watershed groups, or how are we going to meet our water quality goals? How are we going to meet our habitat restoration goals? And then where are we going to find the staff to do this work? How are they going to get trained? How are we going to upskill all these new people that need to know how to take care of these types of green infrastructure practices. These are the nature and natural-based practices that we're using for stormwater. It could be a riparian buffer. It could be a bioretention or a rain garden or permeable pavement. These are all things being installed in the landscape. And often, we want landscape professionals and maintenance crews and grounds crews to take care of them, and they don't know anything about them. And then we have engineers designing using native plants, and they have no idea which native plants should go there. So how can we address that? And then now once we have this group of trained professionals, they'll make better partners for all the groups, nonprofit and government, that are trying to meet our goals. And then we can have a way for consumers to find these professionals. So we've established a database, and I'll talk about that. And then we were also trying to meet some of the issues that were going on. A lot of people thought, well, landscape professionals would make great partners. Let's recruit them and train them. And there are all these trainings all over the Chesapeake Bay watershed. Local government staff were doing them, nonprofits were doing them. They were duplicative. Sometimes they're inconsistent and contrary. And the private sector, like, where should I go get trained? If I want to work in that locality, do I have to go to every locality, every training? Or can we all work together to have a unified training system across the Chesapeake Bay watershed? And then for us, Wetlands Watch, Chesapeake Conservation Landscaping Council, all of our other partners, we saw this as an opportunity to integrate ecology and ecological restoration and protection and conservation and habitat restoration, protection, conservation into these practices to promote this multi-benefit concept for all the work that we do. So as I said, we started getting everybody together in 2014. We launched the program in 2016. We now have 940 certified professionals through our level 1 training throughout the Chesapeake Bay watershed. We have 240 in Virginia, and Liz is a certified CBLP. Maybe there's some more in here. And then we have a second level program, which is advanced. So I'll tell you a little bit more about level 1 and level 2 in a minute. So the whole idea was a 2-level, voluntary, stackable kind of credential, upskilling existing professionals across several different professions. It could be a landscape professional, it could be an environmental professional, it could be soils professional, it could be an engineer, and bringing them all together for consistent training so that everybody understands how to design, install, and manage these practices within the landscape, using sustainable landscaping principles, but also really understanding these stormwater practices and the regulatory compliance needed for them. And then we're actually creating a community of environmental stewards. So if you want more landscape professionals who often are applying road salt and salt on sidewalks and in parking lots in the wintertime, if you want them to change their behavior, we can have a workshop with them and talk to them about it. We have an online database, and then we have a network of aligned training partners. So sometimes local governments will co-host a training, and they get a discount and get more of their staff trained and get more of the pros within their region trained, and we all benefit. In 2021, the Chesapeake Bay Landscape Professional Program was listed as a partner, a suggested partner for state agencies in an effort to develop a clean water jobs training collaborative. And so I'm really proud of that, and a lot of that reason is because we've been partnering with a lot of state agencies in the last several years to ensure that people are properly trained. So we've developed a training and credentialing system. We have our level 1 and 2 professional certifications that require people to get trained, self-study, and then take in form of an exam. We've also developed a lot of other different certificate programs at the request of partners. And then we do advanced training workshops for our certified professionals because they want to dig deeper, delve deeper into a particular subject. I would say that our secret sauce above and beyond other trainings is that every training we do has a field experience. We spend a lot of time outside looking at whatever it is the issue is. If it's a stormwater practice, we're looking at stormwater BMPs. If we're talking about a riparian buffer, we're out in the field looking at the buffers, looking at the plants. And we also integrate a lot of plant concepts, knowledge, plant decision-making, identification into our trainings because people are very eager for that. And then we also talk about the fact that a lot of these green practices are living systems. And we have to understand that they change over time and evolve over time and how to care for them and care for that change. These are our guiding principles. This is where the Chesapeake Conservation Landscaping Council came in. They established these 8 essential elements of conservation landscaping. When I say conservation landscaping, you could also call it ecological landscaping, sustainable landscaping, but all of these principles are really important to keep in mind as we're thinking about stormwater practices as well. If we want to use these green types of practices, then we need to be applying a lot of these principles. And you will see that one of the principles is conserve and clean water. Another principle is use locally native plants and do no harm in the first place. Don't use invasive plants, and then manage the invasive plants. A big secret that a lot of us don't think about is we're doing all of this work, like we're installing millions of acres of riparian buffers, and other people are installing invasive plants. They're invading our buffers, and we're spending just as much time and money managing those invasive species as we are actually planting and achieving our goals and benefits. We've developed a lot of technical resources. We tried not to reinvent the wheel, and a lot of our key references were already out there. They were all well-respected resources. Most of them are free on our website. You can download them. There was not a sustainable landscape maintenance manual, so we worked with a landscape architect to develop that, and that's one of our key references. We also, plants. I don't know, everybody wants to know, what are the right plants? And how do we take care of them, and how do we recognize them? So we developed this native plant, we call them safari cards. On the front is information about design of the plants and a plant ID, an image of the plant and where it should be located within a bioretention practice, and what its salt and water tolerance might be. On the back is how it should be maintained and when it should be maintained. So this is just a short list of all the different professions that have come through our training. And you can see it crosses so many different sectors. But really, we're all working on let's eliminate or manage the cause of a lot of our water quality problems. And then one of the things we heard from a lot of the professionals when we were developing the program is, it would be really nice to earn CEUs for my existing credentials when we go through this. So, for instance, Virginia DEQ certified stormwater inspectors and planners can earn most of their 2 years of professional development hours by going through our level 1 training. All the certified arborists, certified urban nutrient managers. So we've arranged these kind of complementary partnerships with a lot of the professional organizations, so our certified professionals can earn their continuing education credits. So our level 1 training, when COVID hit, we converted it to a COVID-friendly format, And we used to do 2 days, consecutive days in person, and we now have a hybrid format where we do what used to be the first day is 2 half days of online synchronous learning, and they're very interactive Zoom workshops. We have 1 day field practicum where we go out and we spend a lot of time looking at stormwater best management practices and evaluating them. There's a self-study requirement, and then we have an online exam, and then everybody who goes through and gets our certification has to do a hands-on BMP or Sustainable Landscape Practices project within the first year of their certification, and they report it back to us. And I'll give you some information about that. This is just, we've developed a form, and it's based on a technique that was developed by the Chesapeake Stormwater Network called Bioretentions Illustrated. It's a way of doing a very rapid visual inspection of a stormwater best management practice and evaluating it for its function and whether you see any critical issues that need to be addressed right away or if there are any maintenance or management issues. This one is a critical issue. It's not draining. It's been wet for more than 48 hours. So you would report that if you found it. If you have, the big thing about this is this idea of using these green infrastructure practices is we need a lot of people with eyes on the ground reporting issues when they see them and not waiting till it gets to this point. We see a lot of great examples of stormwater practices, but we see a lot of really bad ones because what has happened is we've spent a lot of money putting them into the ground, getting them designed, and then walk away. And then nobody comes back until it's time for the verification inspection, which is what is needed to continue to get the water quality credits for meeting our total maximum daily load. We have our level 2 training. It's you have to go through level 1 and you have to have some experience with green infrastructure practices and sustainable landscapes. It's more of a seminar type format, and everybody has to do a site design where they're designing what's called a treatment train of managing the stormwater in a series of practices, and that you learn how to do the math to calculate and size the practices properly. We do our advanced workshops. We've done a lot of really great ones, a couple of sustainable maintenance practices. So CBLPs are having an impact. I get to look at all the projects, hands-on projects that people are reporting, and I add up the results. So these are how many different conservation landscapes, how many different rain gardens and permeable pavement. This is just area of practices that have been implemented each year. And then I figure out what are the impacts in terms of water quality. And these are the impacts. Now that's not to say that it hasn't been reported someplace else for reporting purposes. And then, as a result, as I said, we've had a lot of partners come to us and say, hey, we really like a specialized training, or we really want you to focus on just training maintenance crews and just on the activities and skills they need. So we've developed a series of trainings that are workforce development trainings and green industry pathways, and I'll go through those very quickly. One is our buffer certificate course. The James River Association and the Riparian Buffer Consortium is in the upper and middle James. They are installing acres and acres of riparian buffers. They need more people to do the work. The contractors doing the work can't find crews to hire. And we don't have enough trees to meet our goals. So they wanted us to do some trainings for them. At the same time, We were working with the Alliance for the Chesapeake Bay and other partners in Pennsylvania who also saw a need for this training. And so we developed this 3-day certificate program. We'll be running it again in September. Right now we're focusing still on the Upper and Middle James because we have a contract with them to perform the training. And we have engaged experts to help us do the training. So all of our trainings, people that are the trainers have experience in what they're training about. I'm working on a living shoreline training program. In the lower James and in the coastal area, but besides riparian buffers and trying to restore those 100-foot RPAs, resource protection areas, there's a lot of work trying to get these living shorelines, which are now the required shoreline management practice in Virginia. But we don't have enough people who know how to do the work and install it. It's kind of the same wherever you talk about anything involving landscaping, construction, plants, installation, we see that there's not enough people going into those fields of study and practice and not enough people to do the work. So we're working on that right now and hope to launch that late fall. Then we're building pathways for career development. And we've started some Spanish language programming. So we've done several workshops that are bilingual workshops. So one way we're doing the pathway and career development is, for some people, this self-study and quick 2-day, 3-day trainings for our level 1 training is too fast. And so we're integrating it into community colleges, into their horticulture, sustainable landscapes programs. Our first partner was Community College of Baltimore County, and we've had a number of students who have graduated from that class or finished that class. They take our exam as their final exam, and we've integrated it into their class. We're looking for Virginia college partners. We haven't done it in Virginia yet. We have a couple new partners in Maryland that are getting ready to start. We have cruise trainings. These are really popular. They're kind of low cost, no PowerPoint presentations. We have some posters. It's all outside. It's really focused, really great team building, and affordable too. A lot of local government staff or private crews don't want to spend a lot of money on training their maintenance crews. There's a lot of high turnover in in that group of workers. And so this has been a great thing. We've done one in partnership with Albemarle County, in the city of Charlottesville. We actually did one for the VDOT inspectors, just for VDOT recently. And it's been very successful. We're going to do a Spanish language one soon. These are, we just did a green roof maintenance training, and we piloted it, and it was also bilingual, introduction to sustainable landscapes, and so that's how we're starting to integrate Spanish language. With both the Virginia and Pennsylvania Department of Corrections, there's really been a lot of interest in, can we work with the inmates, incarcerated people, to give them some skills and certifications that once they're out, they'll have a marketable skill. And so in Virginia, we did it with State Farm, and we partnered with James River Association, Virginia Cooperative Extension, Hirschman Environmental, and we trained 8 women, and 3 of them received our buffer certificate. One of the contractors, the Conservation Services, is really looking for people to hire, and so they helped us do the training. They were hoping that they could hire some women as they got out. We've been doing the same thing in Pennsylvania as well. And this is one I'm really excited about. I talked about how there just aren't enough youth going into these fields of study and practice. So we partnered initially with a group, Howard Eco Works in Maryland, but with the Chesapeake Bay Landscape Professional Associate Program. It's targeted towards growing interests, skills, and pathways for high school youth and recent graduates. And so we got it accepted through the Virginia Board of Education, through the Career and Technical Education program as an industry credential. And I had a grant through, a resilience grant through RISE, which is based in Norfolk. And I piloted it and integrated it into 2 high school horticulture classes, one with City of Portsmouth, which is an inner city, very urban program, and then with the high school, Gloucester High School. And also I piloted it with the Elizabeth River Project, and they have these summer interns that they work with through a workforce development funded internship program. And so we've certified, let's see, about 60 high school students just last year. And we're talking about how can we scale this up and get more of this into the high schools. It's great because these are kids that are around, they're maybe juniors, seniors, they might be younger, and they're just trying to figure out, what am I going to be doing when I get out of school? Well, we have some entry-level jobs for you that you could just go right to, and we'll set you up with those employers. And they're pretty good paying jobs too. They're hard work, physical work, but they're good paying jobs. Or here's some career options. So we have mentoring and we have career days as well. And we're just, like I said, we're more than training though. We're a lot more than training. We're a network and a community of practice. And we work through partnership. And so I'd like to think of you guys to think of us as a resource and invite you to get certified or reach out to the landscape professionals that live and work in your community, your contractors, and tell them to get certified and start changing their practice, because the traditional landscape programs can be a source of a lot of our contamination. So they can be the source or the solution.
Great, thank you, Shereen. All right, we have time for a few questions. Anybody have questions for Shereen? Yes, I'll come to you in the back.
Is there any effort to make this requirement for like VDOT and other states transportation?
There are some. There's actually Pennsylvania Turnpike Authority made it a requirement that all their maintenance contractors be CBLP certified. So when we designed this, we designed it as voluntary, because people didn't want it to be a licensed profession through the state, for instance, at least in Virginia. So some organizations are starting to add it as a requirement in their RFPs or preferred. So for instance, we've partnered with Old Dominion University. They've hosted a lot of trainings for us, and they've actually reached out to the state, and I think they have a new level of qualifications for better pay, like an engineering technician or environmental technician, and that they need to have CBLP or something similar as their training.
Great. One more question. Here you go.
Are you seeing a lot of site contractors seek out this certification, the ones who are initially building the BMPs in order to achieve stabilization? Or are you, and if not, are you seeing them hire people who have these certifications already in order to achieve stabilization for BMP acceptance?
It really depends. You know, first of all, we've had a number of engineers come through our program, or landscape architects, and they are the original consultants. We've had a number of DEQ, stormwater managers, and inspectors go through our program, and they're responsible for inspecting as these practices are being implemented. And there's actually, right now, there's just more work than people can handle. It's hard to actually find people. So in some ways, I just talked to, we're partnering with the Science Museum of Virginia. That's where our Richmond training is going to be at, and they're doing a really cool project. But the person managing it originally didn't really understand this type of redesign, and so some decisions were made along the way that were not great. But they are replacing an entire parking lot with green infrastructure, green space. Their maintenance person that they hired is Brightview. It's a huge, huge group, and they say they're doing sustainable work, but mainly they're converting to all electric vehicles and maintenance equipment. But they don't really know the native plants and low, you know, those other sustainable practices. And so they were the only company that applied, that answered the RFP, and that doesn't give the Science Museum of Virginia a lot of wiggle room for specifying certain, you know, sustainable practices. So.
Great. Well, thank you, Shereen.